Buongiorno everyone, today I'm here to design another face in Nomad Sculpt, and as you can see what I'm going for the start, I want to add some points that can be useful for the future. At the beginning I should say that this video is not very short, but to be honest it could be at least 20 minutes less, because I have done so many mistakes that you don't have to repeat them, but I was so lazy to edit the video and delete those parts. The second point is that, as you can see that I delete the default sphere and add another one to reduce the memory size, I noticed that there is a already maybe ready face in Nomad Sculpt that I can use for the next time, because it's not a race and I don't want to torture myself. I can use that face and reduce the time and energy that I'm gonna spend to make a face. Maybe later by repeating the process I can learn better, but to be honest I'm so lazy. So next time I'm gonna use that face for the start. As you can see, I'm so lazy to work on the primitive shape a lot, so I just edit it a little with a move and then increase the voxels, and instead of using a smoothing brush I use levels to smooth the whole shape at once. I know it was much better if I increase the voxels step by step, but that's enough for me. Then I'm gonna use a cone for nose. I'm gonna enable X-ray, and in this way I can see through my shapes, and it is much easier to relocate the shapes that I need. Many people prefer to use the sphere to create a nose. They don't like to add another shape like cone or ball for eyes, lips or nose, but I'm gonna use this way. I think it is much easier. As you can see, I'm not so good to create the shape of the head correctly, especially in the back, because I'm so lazy. I'm gonna have this problem a lot during this video. Also, before I go further, I want to ask you that if it is possible, like or subscribe to my channel. It's fun. When I see no interaction from you people, it feels that I'm talking with myself in a room and I'm crazy. As you can see, I use smoothing level a lot. I think it is much faster than using brush. Now I want to add the details to the face so fast. I'm gonna use tubes to create eyebrows. Before using tubes, I suggest that double click on that and reset the tool. Before validating the shape, we still have the access to that tools. I'm gonna change the profile to make it a little more like a square. And I'm gonna use the other things if it is necessary to change the radius or the other things about the shape. And before validating, I use mirror to create two eyebrows at the same time. Also, I should add that I'm sorry if my accent is not very good and sometimes it could be a little annoying for you, but I've worked a lot on my accent. I couldn't do anything better. I think it's gonna be a little more fun if I make the eyebrows so big and make the character a little angry. It's gonna be a little look like Mishima in Taken, if you know what I'm talking about. It's a game. Not as good as Mortal Kombat, but it's still good. Now after validating, I have access to those brush to edit the shapes. I'm gonna use move brush to scratch a little beginning and end of the eyebrows, because then it's gonna be much easier to use a smooth and make it more round. Of course I need to increase the voxels so I can make them round much easier. To be honest, making them more round, it was a mistake, because at the end I was thinking that it was much better if I keep the styles of this design more cartoonish and more like animations. Making them round maybe is a little more realistic, but no, it was a mistake. I can increase their size by using inflation or smooth. Those levels, those there that they have a Erlenmeyer icon on top right, are super useful. Now I want to add a mustache. Again, I am thinking that maybe I can use a tube, or maybe no. Before using tube, remember that you should touch the front and have the best camera. But maybe really it is so soon for the mustache. Let's start with the eyes. I'm gonna use clay. I'm gonna click on sub so I can make a hole in the face. Also, you can use those two brushes that is a little hard for me to pronounce their name. But as long as I work more on Nomad, I can say that I'm falling in love with those two brushes more and more. They are so useful and they can give you the shape of working on real clay in Nomad Sculpt. As you can see here, I'm using those two brushes instead of using move brush, which is a mistake. Actually, I can say that I spent so much time for nothing, and I keep doing this a lot during this video. Maybe it's better if I increase the speed of video in these parts, because I'm not doing something special. I'm just trying to understand the difference between flatten and the next brush to it. I think planar, if I'm pronouncing it correct, is much more aggressive than flatten. But remember that you should decrease the intensity a lot when you are using with these two brushes, and also you need to have a shape with so many voxels so you can see the result much easier. Now I noticed that I use them so much and I need to correct my mistakes, so I'm gonna use a smooth brush to make it a little better, but it's not gonna work very good. After that, I'm trying to add a little more details to the face. I'm gonna try to add some muscles to the face, like those muscles between the eyebrows, or when we laugh we're gonna have some muscles on the cheek. I'm gonna use brush again because I wanted to learn. Instead of using clay or brush, I use planer and flatten to add some muscles. But if I go back, I'm gonna use just clay. It was much faster. So if you are going to do this design, do not repeat my mistakes. I know it is so soon, but I am so lazy, so I'm gonna select cone and the face and gonna remesh them together so I can work on the nose here much faster. I'm still learning and I'm so lazy. Today when I was doing this design, I was thinking that I'm gonna spend only about 30 minutes, but at the end I spent much more. This time I learn from my mistakes and I use clay to add more muscles, meat or anything to this nose. With the knowledge that I have currently from Nomad, I use clay a lot. I just gonna change the mood from soft to normal a lot to increase or decrease the shape voxels. I gonna add or delete layers a lot with clay. Then I gonna work on nose. For the nose, remember that it is better if you select the view from bottom and try to make a triangle of the nose from down. The next step is to create the curve for the nose. No nose is just a triangle. Everyone has a little bone at the beginning of our nose, so everyone has that curve there. After that, after adding a little more edges or making them more smooth, I'm gonna use clay in a sub mode to make a hole in the nose. Now I want to add mustache, and I know that it is more logical, more smart if I use tube, but I want to try new things, so I'm gonna add a new sphere and I'm gonna edit the sphere to make a smooth mustache out of it. I'm gonna use X-ray to relocate it much easier. I'm gonna bring it out, and then I'm gonna use gizmo to change the shape. Also, I know that many people gonna use masks to change the shape much easier, but I'm so lazy, so I just gonna use those circles and some gizmo tools to make it much easier and faster. Here, before validating, I noticed those three dots in the tool ribbon, and then I tried to work on them, and I found out that by here you can by default increase the voxels of the shape. I think it's very useful. And then I'm gonna be sure that symmetry is on, and then I'm gonna use move, reduce the size, and I'm gonna create the perfect shape of the mustache for this character. It's not look like Mishima anymore, but I like it. Now I increase the speed of the video a little more, so you're not gonna notice that what I'm doing, but I'm trying to find, is there any way that I can create single hair for mustache with the tools that I already have, or no? That I couldn't, so I just drop it and I go to make a chin and the other shapes of the head. Still, I'm not so good in this part, but I suggest you to use clay, reduce a little of the intensity, and keep rotating your shape from left, right, back, forward, everywhere. And it is much easier if you have a high voxels in your shape, so you can use a smooth much easier. Still, I think that having a little sharp and pointy chin gonna suit this character a little more. Now let's see, I gonna maybe make the nose a little more clear. I gonna use clay and sub. I know that I could use craze, but I just wanted to know that what's gonna happen if I use clay, and the result is not good. But guess what? I found that flatten is amazingly good for creating nose. It can create a bone shape into the nose much easier. As I told you, using flatten and planar, whatever it is much easier and very useful and satisfying when you do 3D modeling in Nomad Sculpt. For the lips, I gonna use crease to create the line and gap between upper and downer part of the lips. Then I'm gonna use clay. I'm gonna reduce the intensity and I try to create a whole shape. I made it a little too much, so I'm gonna add a little to the chin and then I'm gonna smooth it to make it more natural, but I don't like the shape of the mouth. But it is what it is. I'm not here to torture myself. I'm here after the school, after the work, to just have a little fun. That's enough. Okay, I really love these parts to add some muscles to the face. That's the reason that maybe I like to design a little thin people, that they are not so fat in the face, so you can see the muscles, you can see the bones in the face. I like it. If you had the reference, especially if you are at the same level as me at the beginning, it can help a lot. So you're not gonna be like me. I really don't remember that how a face look like from the right or left, and I'm so lazy to search, so I just gonna do it a little from my own. And let's see what I'm gonna do here. As you can see, because I don't have reference, I'm not so good in creating the whole shape of the skull and head. Again, I'm trying to make it a little better by using move. I'm sure that symmetry is on. As I keep trying to create the shape a little better, I can say that I'm okay with the front view, but from the left, right, back, I'm not satisfied a lot. So I'm gonna try to increase the voxels and remesh the face again, so I'm gonna have more flexibility and I can add more details much more easier. This time, instead of using clay in the sub mode, I'm gonna use crease to make it more visible, and I'm gonna redo every details again from the lips or the other parts. That's the reason that you can just increase the voxels in the level that you like and then use crease to add all the details at once. Here I have done everything, and now it's a time to add eyes and lids, the other things, everything. So I'm gonna add a sphere for the eyes. I'm gonna use X-rays so I can create the size much easier. I'm gonna put it in the center, but I noticed that the view is not from the front. I'm gonna click so I can see it from the front much easier. Now that it is in the center, I'm gonna bring it forward from the left view. Here is another mistake that I have done, and I learned from this mistake. Because the holes for the eyes are not perfectly like in the shape of the ball, I have to change the shape of this ball for the eyes. It was a good experience, but if I'm gonna do it again, I wouldn't do that, at least not like this. But I have a little difficulty to find the best location for the eyes. Then I'm gonna make them double by using mirror. And to create the lids, the best way is to clone your balls and rename them as the lid, so you're not gonna miss them. Then to create the upper and lower, I don't know, the bottom lid, the best way is to use a split. Sometimes trims can work, but here I need a split. But my setting for the split is not in the good situation, so I'm gonna reset the split, and then you can see that by splitting the second ball that I create for the lid. And now if I gonna open the scene, you can see that I can have two different shapes. I can move them separately, independently from the upper parts. I'm gonna bring them a little downer. Before that, I should add that the second ball that I add for the leads, I increase their size by gizmo just a little. After that, you can change their size or the shape. I don't suggest to change the size again or change the location anymore. You can just make them more open or close, or change or by rotating them. Do not try to change their position, because later it's gonna be harder for you to edit or correct your mistakes. But here, take a look at what I have done for the mistakes. Now I missed the correct size for the lower leads, and I want to turn it back. Thanks God, here I was able to do it much faster than usual. The reason that I have done that mistake was that I wanted to make it a little angry, and I was thinking that I can do it by rotating. But then I noticed that instead of rotating, I can easily use the other brush that I have. I can increase the voxels for them and then use smooth or even move to change their shape. I think it was much better, but if I go back, I would keep the styles of this character more like a cartoons and not make it so real, which is not real actually. It is something between real and unreal. I'm using a smooth brush here to make it a little sharper. I'm trying to use a smooth to make the edge a little thinner. So thinner actually. After that, again, I'm not satisfied with the shape of the skull and the head. I'm trying to make it a little better again by move, but it's not gonna be end. You're gonna see it a lot during this video. That's the reason that I'm suggesting to have a reference, so you're not gonna be confused like me. You can find so many references in Pinterest or the other websites. It's not very hard. Just try to be a little more active than me. Now I want to try to create the nose a little more round and more cute. Now that I'm rewatching this video and adding voice, I noticed that I was so confused that my character should be scary, angry, cute, what? I was so confused. The next time I'm gonna do it with a reference from Pinterest. Now it's the time to add a little more details to eyebrows. I'm gonna use a stamp and alpha patterns. I have downloaded a lot of alpha patterns before from the websites. It's not very hard. You just need to Google alpha patterns and then you can very easy add them from that import button to your Nomad. They can help you a lot. The things that I should suggest you when you're working with patterns is to decrease your intensity to 1 or 2%. Usually I work them with 2 or 1% because if you use them in the high intensity, you can see that they're gonna destroy your pattern. They're gonna destroy your shape. The next few moments, you're gonna see that how much struggle I'm gonna have to join the leads to the face, because the leads are under the mirror, so I can work on all of them at once. So I increase the speed a little. If you want, you can decrease the speed by YouTube itself and see what I'm gonna do. While you can see that how much struggle I had to join them together, I'm gonna ask you another time that if it is possible for you, please like and subscribe to my channel. It's a fun for me. I'm not a YouTuber, but it's gonna be something that there are some people that spend time to me, and they have the same interests like me. Just that. I'm already done and I joined them together finally successfully. Then I'm gonna rename it. And something that recently happened to me a couple of times is that Nomad crashed and I lost all the projects that I was working on that. So I'm gonna keep saving this project whenever I remember. So I'm gonna suggest you to do the same. Another time I'm gonna change the voxels so the Nomad not gonna crash, and then I'm gonna work on the leads. I'm gonna try to make the edges more smooth and make them more natural for the face. Again, if I wanted to keep the style of this character more cartoonish, I wouldn't do that, but I just learned it. To make work on the eyes a little easier, I choose the solo view from down on the left menu. So I just gonna watch and I just gonna see the project, the shape that I'm working on that. The other shapes gonna be disappeared. Usually it is very useful, but for here it was not very useful. Still, I think this person is a little out of out of muscles and meat. It's a little scary, so I gonna add a little more muscles to the face by using clay and then smoothing the clay every time after using that. Also to the chins, cheeks, foreheads, and wherever that I think it is necessary. You don't have to follow every step that I have done here. You can make your own design just by learning my mistakes and the things that I'm doing here. After all, it's not a homework, it's just a things to enjoy. I think it's a good time to add a little lighting to the shape, so I gonna try to find how can I add a little more natural light. I know that I can directly go to add lights, but I just want to learn what other things gonna do, because maybe I can find a shortcut. I just found that I can change the background and make it a little more bright, so maybe I don't have to add a light by myself, but also I gonna add a light to see what's the result gonna be when I use them at the same time. I have a feeling that the face is so empty, so I gonna add some accessory. Maybe a eyeglass is gonna be a good idea. So I gonna add a sphere, and then I gonna make it more thin by changing the blue blue ball on the gizmo. I gonna double it and then I gonna clone it, so I gonna have the frame and the glass at the same time. But to make the glass shiny, I need to make a hole inside the frame. To do that, I gonna clone the 2 times these circles. Once I gonna clone them for the glasses, and the second one I gonna clone them to use boolean and make a hole inside of them. To use boolean, you should choose both of the circles and then click on the boolean. It's gonna be a little boring because I get confused in the middle of doing that, so you can increase the speed by YouTube. Here I choose the clone and then choose the X-ray, so maybe I can make it a little more visible for myself. And then I use the blue ball on the gizmo to make the glasses more thicker than the frame. And then you're gonna see that I have a problem to use boolean in the correct way, because you should choose both shapes and then hide the one that you want to get disappear and make a holes in another one. I have a problem. It's a little confusing. I'm sure you have the same idea if you're not gonna use it a lot. So finally I'm going to learn. Here I learned them, and then I made a hole inside the frames so I can add glasses. To make glasses look like a real glass, I gonna choose material, and then I gonna use reflective or adhesive. I gonna use reflective. I gonna play a little with these settings here. Maybe I can make it more look like a real glasses. I gonna increase the voxels and then I gonna smooth it, so it's gonna be higher quality. Also, I use gizmo to make the glasses a little bigger, but then I noticed that no, because they're gonna be out of the frame. So instead of that, I try to select the frame and make it a little more thinner and make the holes a little bigger, but it was not easy to understand what I'm doing, so I gonna paint them first so I can see what I'm doing a little more easy. For the start, I gonna choose the frames be in the shape of the gold. It is more luxury. I gonna increase the voxels. I gonna use a smooth to smooth this gold. Then I gonna use move alt 2. I know that using move or drag is not the best option, but I'm so lazy to add another shape just for the connection of the glasses. It is nothing, I'm just doing and repeating the same mistake again and again, so I increase the speed. Then I gonna work on the glasses. I gonna choose them and I gonna try to give them a color to make them more look like a real glasses. But during the choose a pattern and color for the glasses, I noticed that it's not very easy to understand what I'm going to do without painting the head and skin first. So I'm gonna stop at the moment and I'm gonna go choose the skull, head, whatever it is, and try to paint it. Here again I increase the speed for a little. I'm not gonna do anything special. I just try to choose the best color for the frame and the skin. Again, thanks God there are some skins color by default in Nomad, so you can choose them very easy and fast. And then I'm gonna work again a little on the shape of the head, but it's not gonna work, and again I'm gonna work it later much more. Again, after all of those, still I think it is not enough details on the face, so I cannot work easily on the glasses. So I try to paint the eyes. I did a horrible mistake. You're gonna see that how fake and how low quality it's gonna be. So whatever I'm doing here, you should not do that. This one was okay. I increased the voxels and I make the balls for the eyes a little more smooth. This one was okay. Then I choose mask to make that blackness inside the eyes that I don't know how to say it in English. I choose the mask and then I gonna make it sharper and use invert so I can work on the white area much easier. I gonna use gizmo to bring it out. Again, I did a mistake and I choose to go inside. Then I notice and because you see the right eyes is working but the left eye is not gonna change. So I noticed that there is some mistake. My mistake was that I play the wrong side by gizmo. Then I gonna fix it. Here I increase the speed of the video a little more for a couple of seconds, but I'm not gonna do something special. I just gonna deselect the mask, then I gonna choose paint and I gonna try that which paints work better on the eyes with how much metalness and roughness. I try to make it more real by adding those lines in the eyes and that, I don't know how to say it in English, the big black dot inside the eyes. Something that I can say is very useful is to add that part, that white part that it is usually a reflection of the light on your eyes with using metallic color. And then I try to see what gonna happens if I change the material for the eyes or playing with these settings. Nothing special happens at the end. After playing a little with the materials, it's a time to add eyelashes for the eyes. The easiest way is to use tube. It's not gonna be perfect in this method, but it's gonna be fast. You just try to choose the best camera front usually for your character. You're gonna use tube. If the setting is not okay, try to reset it, then paint on your shape and then change the radius with that orange dot on your shape, paint it and use drag to create the hairs for the eyelashes. It takes a little time for each case to find the best size and intensity for drags to have a perfect eyelashes. Here I was thinking that maybe the mistake that I was done when I worked with Nomad to create characters and at the end the result is not similar to what I have in my mind is that the size of the creature, the human, the face that I'm making is not big enough. Next time I'm gonna increase the size of the sphere at the beginning. So from the beginning I'm gonna work on something much bigger. I think in that case I can add much more details much easier. For example, I can add hairs for the eyelashes much easier and much faster than now. When you try to paint the hairs, usually it is better that if you're not gonna use metalness for the hairs, and then you can use a smooth brush to make the hairs a little more sharper. Okay, as you can see, the result is very not real, not at all, very bad actually. But okay, let's clone it and put it on the mirror so it's gonna be more natural. I cannot say, but at least it's gonna be also for the other eyes. Then I gonna change the color of the eyebrows and the mustache to make it more, it becomes more young. Actually I wanted to make it much more older, but it is what it is. Maybe for the next design. Now I gonna again uncheck the hide option for the eyeglasses. Maybe now I can see what I have done. Oh, and you can see that the shape of the head is so awful. To make it better, I try to add a neck in. Maybe it can work a little better. Usually I use balls or the other shapes for the neck, but this time I try to add cone to see what's gonna happen at the end. I gonna remesh and attach it to the head so I can work on it. I need to smooth it, but this time I gonna use a smooth brush, not the level. So, and then I gonna use move to make it more like a real head, but what can I say, the result is not so good. Again, I think I have done nothing special, so I gonna increase the speed a little more for these seconds. After changing the color, I gonna use move brush to make the neck a little bigger. Actually I'm trying to create the other parts of the body like shoulders or torso by that cone that I add, but the result is not gonna be perfect, to be honest. It can be perfect by move and this method, but I'm not in a mood to spend so much time here. Little by little I'm noticing that something is very wrong with this face, but what can I say? It's the time to add ears. Ears are usually easy. I just need to add another sphere. I'm gonna make it a little thinner by using gizmo and that blue balls. Then I'm gonna rotate it a little more so they're not gonna be like the mirrors for the cars. And then after I'm becoming sure about the position and the other things, I'm gonna use mirror in the tool ribbon and duplicate it. As I increase the speed a little so you're not gonna waste your time so much on my video, I try to make the shape of the ear correct by using crease, move, and adding also a little more meat by clay. The result was not so bad. Actually I learned that I can create a very good ear by using crease and flatten and planer, if I pronounce them correct. Now let's change and add a little more meat to the other parts of the face, especially the nose. You know, when I was doing this character I was kind of proud of myself and I was enjoying a lot, but now that I'm adding this voice to this character I can see so many mistakes, so many problems about the shapes, about the place of the eyebrows, the nose. It could be much better. Actually it's a little look like Gandhi. I can turn it to the Gandhi later. Now let's change the color of the eyeglasses. It's gonna help to this one look like a little much more better. more realistic. I don't know. I don't know what is wrong with Nomad, but I think that at least I cannot create a realistic face on it. Maybe I should use Blender or something else with much more powerful PCs and not just a tablet. But just for having a fun is okay. I like to, my glasses can be see-through. I don't want to have a very dark glasses. After that, I need to add a little more pattern and make the mustache and eyebrow more look like a real things that is created by hairs. The best way is to use stamp and alpha models for both eyebrows and mustache. The thing that you should be remember, increase the voxels so they can accept the patterns. You should download some alpha patterns in the internet, there are a lot, and decrease the intensity. After that, you're gonna do the same for the skin. I have downloaded some patterns before and now I'm gonna use them. And when you are using a stamp to add some textures to the skin, look how big I make them. If you want to create, if you're gonna be a little in rush and not be a little more patient and just want to finish the work much faster, you're gonna click on a point and drag your pen so far to give a big area suddenly a big texture, and by doing that you actually destroy the details and you destroy your shape. You're not gonna have a good texture, so be patient. Add the texture to the skin, especially to the skin and the hair, little by little. Click on the area and then move your pen a little and very slowly, so you're gonna have a good pattern. From here I suggest you to increase the speed of the video a little more because I'm not doing something special. I'm just trying to add some details to the skin by using a stamp and pattern. It is something time consuming, but it's not something hard or important that you need to watch it very carefully. But something that can help you to have a little more realistic skin is after adding texture, using the paint and add some dots. It could be red or black on the skin, because I think nobody has a skin very perfectly. Everyone's has a skin that is not very clean, very even, so it can helps you to have a little more natural skin. And here, as you can see, the eyelashes on this guy is so artificial. It's not natural at all. Also eyebrows, also mustache. So that's the reason that I usually suggest to create characters that they don't have hair, because I don't like the hair that I'm gonna make in the Nomad. As you can see, I'm adding a little red dots at the tip of the nose and ears. Maybe this person is a little cold. For the lips, I'm gonna use the red, but I'm gonna increase the metalness of the paint, so it's gonna be a little more natural. It's gonna shine a little. Also, I try to create some shadows, some artificial shadows with a little darker colors. Another thing that I can say is gonna be very useful is to add something like a very fresh shaved head. It's very easy to make if you have a normal shape head, not like the things that I created here. Whenever I see the head that I designed, I think that I should stop making videos at all. But who is this? I'm gonna do it. I hope you can do something better than me. After adding a little texture by a stamp to the skin, you can change the color and gonna have a little more natural pattern for the hair. One thing that you should be very careful when you add pattern to the skin, if later you're gonna use clay, for example a little forward, I gonna notice that maybe I need to add a little more texture, muscle, or clay, whatever you want to call it, on the cheeks. If I gonna use clay, this clay gonna remove all the texture that I have already added. The solution is to use layer, to add layer. In this case, you can keep your texture. Here I'm going to add a little more dots. I suggest you to turn off the symmetry, but you can do whatever you want. For now, let's work a little more on the lips. I destroyed the shape. I want to make it correct, but it is not possible. Also, I have the problem, the eyebrows are so artificial. So I'm gonna use the drag. Maybe I can play with the eyebrows a little more, so maybe I can make it a little more realistic. If I gonna start the designing of this creature from the beginning, I wouldn't create the eyebrows so big like this, or I keep the styles look like animation. You know, now it's not so balanced between being realistic and being cartoonish. The face, the skin is a little more realistic than the eyebrows and mustache. I think it is very important to keep the harmony when you make a design. You're gonna feel much better when you look at your artwork. Here I try to add some white hairs into the mustache and eyebrows, but I noticed that even if I reduce the size of the brush in the smallest, I cannot have a very thin hair, so it's not very useful. That's the reason that if I return from the beginning, I gonna make the shapes much more bigger. I gonna use all the capacity of my iPad and increase the memory that Nomad is using as much as possible, so I can have more details on my design. To be honest, I think the result is good by here, or I can say that I'm tired. And now it's the time to play a little with light and background. I'm gonna remove the background environment light, and I'm gonna try to see if it's gonna be better if I gonna add a little more light by myself. Then I want to add background. For the background, I'm gonna use a box. I'm gonna make it as big as possible. I'm gonna increase the voxels of this wall background because I want to add a pattern for the fabric. A couple of days ago, I downloaded some alpha patterns. They were for fabrics, wood, and here I want to use the fabric to see how does it going on. How does it feel it? How can I feel it? Sometimes English is a little annoying. Anyway, again, I'm gonna choose a stamp. I'm gonna increase the size. Look, the intensity is not too much. And now I'm gonna deselect solo so I can see everything. I don't need it to be so thick, so I'm gonna make it a little more thinner. And I'm gonna try to cover all the background with this wall. Let's see where I want to have the shadow. I think I don't know if it is good or it is bad, but I think the wall and light, the mix of them, helped me to have a much more quality skin. Now the texture of the skin is much more realistic. Now I can say that I am happy. Also the hair for the mustache and eyebrows are a little more realistic. For the painting, I prefer to have a little, something not so shiny, something dark, something like a gray maybe, or maybe a little purple. For now, I don't know, maybe later I'm gonna change it. Maybe it's a good time if I add another light. I'm gonna keep it simple. You know, now the background is a little metallish. You can see the reflection of this guy on it. I like it. It's not very bad now. Also, it's a time to, doing some little experiments. I'm gonna use a stamp. I had some hairs pattern that I never used them. I want to see what's gonna happen if I'm gonna use them. I'm gonna increase the intensity. They are upside down, but let's see. Let's see how much it's gonna destroy the voxel. Why they are so shiny. Okay, I'm gonna make them more rough. Okay, they are upside down, but doesn't matter. Maybe a little less intensity is gonna be better, or maybe I should increase it. I don't know yet. Because the stroke check mark on the color section is on, the patterns that I add, they have the color. If you cannot add the color, you should uncheck or check that checkbox at the beginning, at the top part of the color. Up to here I'm okay with the design. Everything is good, but not eyebrows. Maybe I should change it, but no, leave it. Let's add a little texture. I want to have some veins and make this person a little more angry. I'm gonna use clay, but I suggest you to use layer if you want to have if you want to add vein. Also, I'm gonna use crease to make some wrinkles around the eyes and the other side of the face. I'm gonna make the solo so I can see what I'm going to do. This part is under the mustache and eyebrows. We're not gonna see it, but let's do it. Better than nothing. The symmetry is off because I think if the symmetry gonna be on, it's gonna be so artificial, so I don't like it. Let's also use pinch so I can have a little more sharp edges. Or here there is not so much texture for the skin. I know that this part is under the eyebrows, but I want to have, have everything correct. I try to add details and patterns as much as I get satisfied. I'm not super satisfied. Also, I think the hairs is not enough, so I'm gonna use some patterns. Maybe I can find something better, but even if I cannot find, that's okay. I'm getting a little tired. I just want to finish it. Let's see here. Maybe I can give some more depth, a little more pointy hairs to the mustache and the other parts. And here I want to have the pattern, so I use layer. I will not use clay. I'm gonna make the nose a little bigger. This guy should be a little old, so the nose should be a little more, not very hard. As you can see, when you use layer, I hope you use it better than me, because I have the very high intensity and the size is not very correct. But it's gonna be so good because you're not gonna lose the texture of the skin, but later I have to use a smooth because it was so big. Now it's the time to join the ears to the head. I'm just gonna choose them using remesh. I hope my iPad not gonna crash because the file is gonna getting a little heavy little by little. I'm gonna use a smooth to make the joint area more natural, and then I'm gonna add some patterns. Also, I think it's a good time if I'm gonna add a ring to the ear, so I'm gonna use this shape. I'm gonna validate it and I'm gonna reduce the size, and then I'm gonna paint it like a gold. I don't know about you, but I feel that when people, especially with this kind of face, they have so many gold things on themselves, I think all those golds are fake. So I don't think that they are really rich. They just want to show off. I think that this guy is doing show off by having a gold ring on the ear or gold frame for the eyeglasses. So I'm gonna change the eyeglasses to the plastic, maybe a little black, more. Okay, I think it's good. It's not gonna be so shiny, it's not gonna have a vibe of a person that wants to show off and shout that look at me, I'm so rich. Also, I'm gonna add a little more red things on the tip of the nose. It's good if you reduce the roughness and make it a little metallic, so it can be shine more. You know, I think in those parts of the face, usually we have some sweat, there are some moisture, and they shine. It's good. Now I can say that I'm tired. I'm not okay, but I'm tired of working on the face, especially because of the eyelashes. I think it was so big mistake to make them like that. But the face is okay. I'm gonna add a little more details. Then I want to work on the torso. I don't want this guy being naked. It is already so creepy, so I'm gonna try to make it a little better. I'm gonna duplicate the head, because the head and torso are the joined together, and then I'm gonna trim. I'm gonna reset and I'm gonna trim the face because I just want the torso. Let me also recharge the iPad. Okay, now it's on charge. I'm gonna use the levels and I'm gonna use inflate. I want to make this new part a little bigger. You can see, because I think it's the best and easiest way to make clothes. I'm gonna use those softness and inflate in the level, so I'm gonna have something a little bigger than the body but with the shape of the body. So it's gonna be easier. I'm gonna remove the head, so because you don't have to do that, because I'm afraid that the file gonna be so heavy and it's gonna get crash. Also, I'm gonna use move and smooth to make it maybe a little more thin and more soft, look like a real clothes. I'm gonna try to make some holes. Maybe in that case I can have a little more thin, a little look like a shirt. Let us check. Not bad. Also, you can use drag and the other things to make it more realistic, more look like a real clothes, a jacket or shirt or anything else. But I'm a little disappointed of the face, so I'm not so much in the mood to work more. I'm so tired. I just want to finish, so I'm gonna choose increase the voxels. I'm gonna make it smooth. I'm trying to make it a little more thin, but not gonna work any very good. Let's try to change the color. I don't want so much metalness, and then let's give it some texture for the fabric. But because the I think the color of the shirt is not very in harmony with the color of background, maybe I'm gonna change them, and I can work a little here on the maybe some buttons, some things like I don't know. I'm gonna use clay brush. It was too much. It was too much, so I'm gonna use Ctrl Z, and I'm gonna add with brush. The good things about brush is that at the same time it can have it can be with the pattern and color that you want. That's enough. It is done. I'm gonna add some dots. For example, there are some maybe you know what I want to say. Let me also add some details for the metal shape to the buttons, and that's it. The rest of the things that I'm gonna do is not important. So remember that adding a light, it was very good. Do not try to make realistic, keep it cartoonish, it's gonna be much better. As you can see that I'm getting adding some scratch, some details to the face to make it more badass. I think it is much better than beginning. And that's it. Thank you. Like.